And we're live. We're live, guys.
Right.
Welcome to the party, everybody. It's the three crypto musketeers in the house. Blockchain Brad, Crypto Zombie. Guys, how's it going?
Hey, Lark. Thank you so much, mate.
Oh, massive pleasure to have you guys on. I mean, just the wealth of knowledge in your two's heads is absolutely awesome. And so it's really great to be able to get in here and, pick you guys' brains. So I think a great place to start, guys, and you can jump in whenever you want. What the heck is going on with the markets? What do you think?
Hold on, time out, guys.
Oh, time out. He's getting his headset. Brad, you want to jump in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, Lark, your media, the amount of stuff you know is just, it's out of this world. So I've just actually come back from Consensus. K-Dub knows that. I was so lucky to meet him there. So K-Dub, thank you so much, mate, for being part of that. Yeah, I think just catching up, finding out things from you. Fundamentally, I think what's exciting now is, as we'll talk about later, is coming, but it's also just trying to understand like news that's coming through, just keeping up to speed with all kinds of stuff, I suppose. I'm always in the ICO world, I have to be honest. I'm always reading white papers, so I'm a bit boring like that.
The ICO world's so except all the white paper reading. I mean, I probably read, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 white papers a week.
Yeah. Well, Kyle knows, K-Dub knows I'm definitely a white paper nerd. So
you got to curate the finest of white papers,
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, lately for me, white papers have been like a bit of an acquired taste. Like at first I hated reading through them, but now it's actually I kind of like it a little bit more because I understand them better than I used to back in the day. So it's kind of like, I was sorry, guys. I was having some issues on my side. Is everybody good? Can everybody hear? Just real quick, give me a 1 if you could hear it. Those headphones, they weren't working. So are you guys good? Give me a 1 if you could hear. And we can
we're hearing. I'm hearing you great. So I mean, hope your audience is. But
I was just distracted by your shirt too, K-Dub. I love your shirt, bro.
I was telling him.
All right,
great. He wins the shirt prize today.
Okay, we're all good on my side. And yes, as far as the shirt, I knew I was going to be on a live stream with Lark, and I felt like there had to be that friendly competition.
I love your shirts. I really love them. Like every time, I know now if I go to a conference with K-Dub, I'll find him straight away.
Thank you. I'm very casual today. I feel I need to step it up a little bit.
That's all good, bro.
Oh, it's awesome. One thing about reading white papers I want to just throw out here is that when you find a good one, like for me, I have this moment when I'm reading through a white paper, I'm just like, oh, they get it. This is great. What is this? But that doesn't happen to too many white papers. Reading through most of them, you go, oh my God. Oh, not those buzzwords again.
Or you'll read one that's like 6 pages and you're like, clearly they don't get it. Clearly somebody's either helped them or they just wanted to fast track stuff. But for the most part, except for the Bitcoin white paper, which was like one of the most beautiful ones that I've ever written, to be honest. I'm definitely an agnostic in that sense. But when it comes to their white paper, it was so beautifully written for what it was trying to achieve. It didn't need 60 pages. So sometimes it's like you don't even need one that's 60, but it just needs to be so concise and so to the point, like you said, Lark.
Hey guys, just Mimi on my channel said, "Let's talk mainnet launches, gentlemen."
Ah, well, that's great. That was like high on our list of things to do today. So
yeah, so it looks like everyone's just as excited about this. Do you guys want to talk about
where to start? Let me just give a quick list of the upcoming mainnets so everybody realizes how crazy the situation is right now and how much stuff is getting delivered in the near future. Okay, so we got Nulls, Tron, Enigma, Ontology, Fusion, Credits, High Performance Blockchain, Arweave, Oyster Pearl, Eternity, VeChain, EOS, Origin Trail, Daddy, and Divi. I probably missed some, but that's the current list.
That's a lot. Wow, that's awesome. You are prepared.
Most hyped mainnet, Tron or EOS? Or
that's
another
a tough one.
Or another one. I mean,
well, I'll let you go, K-Dub. What do you think?
Most hyped?
Yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, you'd know the market better than me, that's for sure.
Well, EOS just literally went from 40 cents to about $22 at the all-time high, so I'd say that's pretty hyped. Yeah. Tron, definitely. I think Tron is very, very hyped. I mean, I've been following Tron for quite some time. I've just been really waiting for that, like, product. You know what I'm saying? I've kind of been waiting to really see something, but then again, we could say the same from EOS as well. I mean, lately on my channel, I've really been trying to really look into those MVPs, those minimal viable products. You know what I mean? I've really been looking for the prototypes as well. So I'm actually, for me personally, I'm, and this is whatever, my opinion, but I'm excited for things like high performance blockchain. Like I want to see them actually launch their mainnet, because I had opportunity to actually speak with Emma at Consensus, and they're moving along really well with their hardware acceleration. And they're actually going to be able to utilize this for any other blockchain as well. And one of the ones that they're looking at currently is potentially Neo. So for me, that's exciting, because that's like not just, the mainnet is launched, but I actually have an opportunity to see it working. So right. I get more excited about working products. So that's pretty high on my list. Yeah. And VeChain as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you said that, because when we met Michael from Box Mining, he's a big proponent of VeChain, so he would definitely be mentioning that one, and that's certainly got some really interesting tech behind it. But I obviously am very much bullish on Ontology for the long haul, because as you guys would know, it's got such a complex architecture by design. It's certainly got, in my opinion, tech to really build out what Neo started, essentially, which was initially that permissionless architecture. But I think also, like, one of the things I would suggest people really look at as well is look at the history of things that have led up to mainnets, and know that often there's a lot of mechanisms put in place to build hype, as Kyle and also Lark are saying, because there's also engineering behind stuff, and we need to be conscious of not just about the tech. It's about like a whole sort of movement behind them. There's lots of people. Having been to Consensus, it opened my eyes a lot. Let's say just how the whole system works, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes that perhaps people don't know from when they're looking at exchanges. And Ontology certainly there's a lot involved in trying to get it to the degree in which it's hyped, and the degree in which people know it. And I think also, with that respect, EOS is the same. EOS for a long time just wasn't understood, and suddenly, boom, it's out of the blocks, and people are racing to better understand it. And the mainnet really helps do that, I think.
Yeah, when we start seeing those use cases coming through, and people really building on top of EOS, and EOS, putting all these projects out there into the world, I think it's going to really catch a lot of people's attention. One thing, though, it's interesting, there's so many of these mainnets coming up, and quite a few of them are underhyped. I'm glad you mentioned high-performance blockchain, Kyle, because it's a really great one coming up, and a lot of these other ones are too, and they're just not getting anywhere near the hype that Tron's getting, or that EOS is getting. And we saw what happened to EOS. It just got pumped so high, and then of course it's come down to about, I think, 40% of the value that it was at the high. So it's tough. Normally we see a mainnet launch with more run up to it, but in that bear market that we're currently seeing, the EOS mainnet, I don't think, has been delivering the kind of normal mainnet hype, and we have all these mainnets happening at the same time, so they're maybe kind of taking away a little bit of the star power of the EOS mainnet coming up.
Yeah, and it took so long as well, Kyle. Lark, because at the end of the day, when you got a year-long process to get build up in from interest and hype, then I think that then again it really disadvantages those other more technologically based like blockchain plans or projects. So, like, for example, just having talked to Sam recently from Arweave, that's coming up as well. You mentioned that. That's one that was pretty fast moving in terms of releasing what they were and then suddenly going to mainnet. So that's one I think people certainly should look at as well, because they were not about extending their potential for hype. In fact, they wanted to just get moving with their MVP and get down to business. So it's certainly interesting to see their motivations behind building out a long-term process before a mainnet, or perhaps not. And you see the opposites between Arweave and EOS, I think, is one example.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you see as well just the whole mechanism that happens behind it. And the mainnets are coming. They're going to deliver some really great projects for us. I think a really, though, under the radar one, probably Null's. Null's something I covered a while ago, and they're one of those projects, they've just been building the tech and doing what they do. And you see Tron, for example, and a few people mention it here in the chat, so I thought I'd bring it up. Tron put the cart in front of the horse and just pushed their way up the hill regardless. They got so much hype, and then so many hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, with hundreds of millions of dollars, you can do a lot. You can develop a lot. You can deliver on a lot of promises when you have that much money available. Right. Whereas some of the other projects haven't gone that mass hype route. They've gone, we're building the tech route. What do you guys think's better? Do you think the hype machine with all the money, then you can build anything you want because you have billions of dollars on hand, or just hunker down, build the tech, don't really say much until you can deliver?
K-Dub,
yeah, I don't know. That sounds like you just tied. I don't know, because in one hand, the hype machine, like you said, you're building up that capital, you're building up the ability to actually fund the project and then deliver on the promises. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I like working products, so that's just my personal opinion. I do. You know, I try to talk to projects that at least have something I can look at. You know, I'm not a developer. I can't read code, but it's a lot more comforting for me when the GitHub has, you know, a lot of commits. There's a lot of things happening, and, you know, you have developers utilizing on top of it. And actually, one of the things that I do want to say when you were speaking about EOS, now it is a bit of a hyped mainnet, but I have spoken to a lot of developers and projects that are currently utilizing the EOS testnet for their upcoming projects. And there's a few of them that have actually forked the EOS blockchain for their own blockchain as well. So, you know, that being said, even though we haven't seen a lot come out of EOS right away, there are projects right now that are utilizing the EOS tech. And that kind of actually leads me into something else. I don't want to get off the topic of the mainnets if everyone wants to stay on it, but I started noticing that recently I'm seeing a trend with blockchain as a service rather than trying to put everything on blockchain. And just to give you a few examples, I've spoken about A-Chain a lot on my channel, and a lot of people, you know, they don't quite understand what it does. But if you look at Komodo, they're very similar. And although there's been this like huge boom about, you know, mass transactions per second and high throughput, which is great, but in reality, most of these enterprise solutions don't require 1,000 transactions per second. I mean, yes, if you're MasterCard, your you know, your Visa, your Facebook, fine. But, you know, if you're just an average, like an insurance company or even like a hospital, you're not doing 1,000 transactions per second. So do you guys think that blockchain as a solution could be a possibility? I mean, look at Neo, for example. We've seen Deep Brain Chain currently coming out with their own chain. QLC Chain coming out with their own chain with Shannon Consensus. They're also integrating Block Lattice with smart contracts. So, I mean, where do you see the future of these infrastructure platforms?
That's a good question.
You want to take it first, Brad?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I speak a lot about the platforms and a lot about the infrastructural and about the protocols. And I totally agree with you, K-Dub, in that sense, because at the end of the day, without the infrastructural, you really don't have the platform for what goes on, what is built upon that in terms of whether it's a dApp or whether it's some sort of other tech. But there's also things like Hashgraph we're learning that right down to the DLT, right down to the distributed ledger tech, we're noticing that there's even competitors to blockchain. So in that sense, I think what's fundamental is utility, right down to the end. Like what we all want to see is that these have real world use case. But right now, that's not the case. Right now, we're looking at things that hope to. And so that's what we're all grappling with as we read white papers, as we discuss them. Even EOS, for example, a lot of these are, for want of a better analogy, they're like the skeleton. But there's no meat built to these until we get these things appending, whether they be the dApp or whether they be some other sort of service, as K-Dub was saying. So for me personally, I still focus on the skeletons because I don't think we're past that stage. We're trying to work out which ones are actually going to do something productive and sort of speculate as best we can with the information we have. So yeah, I really do think we're still in that stage of understanding, but I think we're moving so bloody fast. It's so exciting. And that's what makes this, I suppose, the speculative, like intellectual game, because you do have to read so much to understand it. But that's why I love this space where we can talk about it too, is that it's underestimated the value of when we can get together and sort of unpack what is the nature of this. Because once you really get into it, you understand there's so many different facets to it. It's not just the white paper anymore. It's understanding the engineering of the whole system. And yeah, I can honestly tell you, when I first started, I was very naive. I just used to read Neo, for the pure love of Neo, and now I understand a lot more.
Just sit down at night, a bit of casual Neo reading.
Yeah.
Brad, can I just interject? I was talking to some people at Consensus, and they were saying that like Neo is like the rite of passage into crypto. Yeah. Some people were like, did you go through that like Neo cult phase? Yeah. Where like everyone in crypto is like, there was like that 1 month where like all I could look at was Neo, right? It just has that.
I was such a Neo nerd. I should have worn a green tie, I swear to God, because it took me a lot. I have to admit, like it took me a lot to understand like how it all works. And when I first read it, I was just like, I want a job with Hongfei. I want to work for him, He's awesome. He was charismatic, and then I loved the tech. I have to be honest. I came from that premise. But now I understand that it really is about trying to understand businesses. And I think we make the mistake of saying that these are projects, and they're not. They are actually they're at the beginnings of businesses that we want to see hopefully, really change the game and reformulate what are currently problematic businesses, because there's too much money going to so few people. We want to totally flip that upside down, and this is how we do it. So, that's, I think, why we love blockchain so much, is because of what it can do, what we hope it will do, and what we support it to do.
That's right. The promise of blockchain is just absolutely massive. And anyone who looks into it and starts to realize the potential of the technology, and go back to the skeleton idea. The skeletons are important because they're going to be the infrastructure of the future distributed intranet as we know it. And getting in on, I feel like in 4 or 5 years, we're going to look back and go, whoa, Neo was $50 and Cardano was 20 cents and all this stuff. People are like, that's crazy, because now the valuation of this stuff is going to be so big. But at the same time, it's like you said, we've got the skeletons, but we need to really flesh it out a little bit, because we have all these projects, X amount of thousands of transactions per second, but no one really needs that yet. No one's using that yet, really, in the blockchain space. And so when we see Hashgraph or any of the other potentially infinitely scalable, that's right.
And I think that's such a great point, Lark, because right now we also have, there's good, the bad, and the ugly in this space in terms of even the projects themselves. And that's why it's so important that we, as sort of proponents of the industry, to really do our very best due diligence to understand, what is the BS in the space as much as we can, because there's no way of knowing for sure. But there's a lot of people who want to capitalize in the system to really just given the growth. I mean, it's just incredible growth, this industry. And so we've seen examples of one that was Confido. Look at that. It's a great example of a piece of absolute crap. But, you see that happen and you're like, okay, for every Confido we do know, how many don't we know? And so again, that DD is so important because it allows us to understand these are actual real scams happening in the system. We make sure we bring them to the fore so we can remove that equation from as much as possible, but also then highlight the better ones.
That's a really important thing to point out. But also, one thing I really like to impress on people is that how many mainnets did I mention? Like 15? Quantum's also got their x86 virtual machine coming out pretty soon. Somebody's written in the chat that I guess Time New Bank has released their testnet the other day, and all this stuff's going on. There's going to be losers. And I think people need to prepare for the fact that there are going to be losers, and that's why, of course, we diversify. Right.
And I think also to add to that as well, obviously people would know if they know anything about me, I tend to try and go a bit earlier and I look at the ICO space and like the research that underpins great projects. And I often notice that in the mainnet, there's a really strong interest and there's a lot of movement up until mainnet day. But it's after the fact. It's what happens after mainnet that I'm looking at too. Because what are people doing with these tokens? What's the reaction? Post mainnet. So it's something to also take into account, because if you look in the past at some really interesting tech, and I won't name names, but there's not so pretty reactions sometimes in terms of the market, because we see too much of an immediate pullback or too much of an immediate reaction post mainnet once they're happy with the price. And so I don't want to talk about investment advice, but I certainly want to bring the attention to people that post mainnet there's a lot of reaction in certain blockchains. And I'm certainly aware. I want to see those that continue on and build.
Actually, not to cut you off, Brad, but recently it's actually been even worse than that. I've seen people dumping 2 weeks before the mainnet, basically just riding up on the hype.
There you go.
Which is sad because you want it to be about the tech, but unfortunately there's so much greed in this market that people are actually capitalizing on that anticipation and forgetting about the actual projects, forgetting about the tech that's involved in it. For the I like real world applications personally. That's why. I mean, Mithril, right? Everybody kind of laughs at it, but I've used the app. It's fun. It's not as great as Snapchat. I mean, it's very, very basic, but hey, at least you guys have a product, right? At least I have something that I could use. I think I've earned about 50 cents worth of Mithril in 2 weeks.
Hey,
so
you're earning, man.
Hey, it's 50 cents I didn't have 2 weeks ago. So
right, I love the way you're thinking, because at the end of the day, aren't we supposed to be also looking at things that have real world applications? Because that's the idea. Technology is supposed to, by definition, make our lives easier. So unless it has application, how the hell does that do that? And the same for one I'm a proponent of in terms of utility is Morpheus Network, for example. And the reason is that they have an MVP, but I love the fact that you've got the ex-president of HDL or some, I can't remember the name of the post.
DHL, Roger Crooks.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you're hearing someone in the real world, in like actual like traditional environments, talking about decentralized technology as something that's useful, I'm paying attention because they usually know nothing about the tech, but they understand the utility of the MVP. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I actually, I spoke with Dan recently. We actually did a fun, instead of doing like an AMA or an interview, I was like, hey, why don't we try something totally different? Just come on my channel and we'll just talk no script, right? And it actually turned out to be one of my favorite, I guess, interviews ever. Because it was just like friends talking about the project, talking about the innovation, talking about connections, and what I like about Morpheus Network as well. I mean, there's so many good. Okay, let's talk about good use cases for blockchain. So you have voting, excellent use for blockchain. Supply chain logistics, excellent use for blockchain, right? And when I spoke to Dan, he really broke it down for me. And when you can kind of get, the thing is like, these people, when you're sending shipments, you know, from A to B, they don't really care about how it gets there. They're like, is it cheaper? Is it more secure? Is it more efficient? And if it is, I don't care if I have to use the Morph token. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? So they already have people on board. They already have partnerships. They're already making, I mean, they're already doing it. So that to me is much more impressive than a project. I don't like when I read a white paper and it goes, we aim to.
I know.
We will.
Or this consensus will achieve this, you know, 2020 or,
I think the use case idea is so fascinating. It just, a lot of people out there get kind of, I get a little bit salty when they think, well, this can't work or that can't work or any of these kind of things. And I think, well, we've got new technology here that's going to offer new possibilities. We haven't even figured out all the use cases yet for blockchain, and we're still just experimenting where there's all these different things. You know, voting, I know a lot of people are really, really skeptical about the use cases of blockchain for voting when it's actually such a great potential fit. And then you have a company like Horizon State, which are just doing awesome stuff already with it. They've already got massive partnerships, and it's going to be happening whether people think it's going to happen or not.
Right. Exactly. It's the same thing with even health industries. I mean, I love it when you see, I'm just trying to think of a few, but even in the AI industry, for example, it's great. Yes, AI is so controversial because we hear about infinite scalability coupled with it, and it's quite complex. But when you hear that they're already using in hospitals for certain applications, I love that stuff because that's already applied. And so they're the kind of projects I like to, you know, explore more of because they're doing real world things with real world people. And as K-Dub was saying, I love this. I love when you see enterprise and the user couple for profit making, in the sense that it's so efficient when you cut out the middleman, it benefits both. And for a long time when I first started reading about this, I was just a huge proponent of just the user, you know, wanting them to really just benefit and profit from the blockchain. But the reality is that when you have a coupling of both worlds and they collide, that's when it's sustainable. Because you have to have, I think, in my opinion, enterprise support the blockchain. And so that's what we're seeing now. They're grappling with how the heck do they do that? How do they, and as you said as well, Lark, is that how do we get scalability? How do we get all these things to happen? And right now we're still at the infrastructural stage, but it's just getting so much more exciting because we're getting closer to that adoption, that mass adoption for us.
Absolutely.
Hey, speaking of infrastructure, go ahead. No, I was just gonna. I just want to say, I was very proud of myself, guys. So do you mind if I just like kind of say something?
Yeah, please do.
So I had one of the most nervous interviews I've ever had in my life.
With CardStack.
Yes. Oh my.
Yeah,
so we were talking about infrastructure, and you know, you and us we're trying to look at like layer 1, layer 2, and Chris C is like, let's look at layer 10, and I'm like, layer 10. I'm like, so we're trying to like reverse engineer this live in the chat, and I am like so just my mind is blown. So yeah, I just wanted to
tell you, I thought you were awesome because I have to admit, when I interviewed Chris, I literally remember tapping my feet, trying to calm myself down because I was like, oh my God, I can't understand some of the things you're actually saying. And this is me. I thought I understood. His mind is just, it's out of this world. And CardStack is still something. I mean, we even talked about this live with box mining as well, Lark, and it's complex. To read the white paper, I found it one of the hardest to read, but it's also one of the most exciting because I still don't like completely get it. Yeah, crazy. And it's just, it's so sophisticated. But what I like the most, I honestly will say this, is Chris's assurance when he's on screen or off screen, he's just so clearly articulating all the different aspects. There's no way that someone can do that unless they really get the tech. So he inspires me, I think, just to delve deeper into the more complexity, the more complex aspects, I think.
Oh yeah, CardStack's awesome. He just knows. He's so like laser focused on what he wants to do and where he wants to take it. And I got a chance to catch up with him in person at Token 2049 in Hong Kong, and I just thought, like, wow, this guy, he's on. He knows what this is going to do. He knows the potential of how we're going to bring this to the masses, essentially.
Right. And I love the fact that there's so many companies out there at the moment who really just want to connect with those who are credible as well. And I will say this publicly, I truly believe all three of us are. And there are certain, I won't even name names, but there are certain people who really are focused more so on tokenomic value. But when we focus on things like CardStack, it's really just to bring to the fore something that we don't perhaps know. So having Chris on and really letting him speak and give him a platform, that's so important, and I think kudos to both of you, because it's not an easy interview, in the sense of bringing CardStack out, and I'm glad we all tried.
Yeah, and speaking on the fact of tokenomics, Brad, I agree with you as well. And it's funny because we obviously, everyone's watching. We're in a bit of it's not the best markets right now. And I see so many people, they're like, well, where can I put my money for a quick 2x, a 3x? Like, where can I make those quick gains? And what's funny is, what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to look for those really, really cheap projects that I know that like next year, the year after, are going to be, essentially, in my opinion, the Amazons, the Googles of the blockchains. And I'm more focused on accumulating my bags of these great tokens rather than trying to make a quick flip. I mean, to each his own. But for me, I have a much longer vision. So does Chris, for example, of CardStack. And I think for me, I think that's why I have more passion to stay in this game and why I can actually wake up every day and make videos, because I'm not worried about what happens tomorrow. If my portfolio's down, I don't care because I'm looking at the bigger picture, and I hope everyone watching is doing that as well.
Well, actually, it's really funny you said that, because I was talking to Matt Spoke of Aeon recently, and what's exciting is when you talk to a whole office of people, including Matt, where none of them have any knowledge really of sort of other aspects of the system. I think that's very exciting, because what happens is they're so focused on the quality of their tech. And that's exactly what you're alluding to as well, K-Dub, is that really it should be about longitudinal value. This is the whole point of it. And if you hear about, a converse argument from a whole office, of a project, there's something wrong, because it's geared differently. But with Aeon, I can tell you, all they do is think about they live and breathe Aeon, and that's what we want to see, because essentially they're representing no different to Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola or Pepsi, when you walk into their office, you want them to talk about their business. That's their core business. And I want to see when I walk into the Aeon boardroom, that's their focus. So I love what you're saying. I think that's sort of the premise we're coming from as well, is that these are businesses. These aren't this is not playtime for the blockchain. This is real time, and these are really something that we can take part in, just in a different means. It's a mechanism right now for us to participate, whereas before it was all closed doors. So that's the thing. It's like finally we're in to participate in a way that enfranchises us to make a difference for ourselves.
Yeah, we're essentially buying like the money of the future, and you're so right. When you look at some of these projects and you realize like how professional the teams are, and you realize the tech they're trying to deliver, you see some of the other stuff, and this is why we're all just kind of like, I don't know, Zen masters when it comes to the markets. It's just like, whatever, we're here for the long term. We're just looking at, oh my gosh, WAN chain's back down to $4, or Aeon's back down to $1.50 or whatever it's going to be. Like, wow, I got to get some more, instead like, oh my god, I got to sell everything, because I was betting, I was gambling, I was hoping for an overnight 2x. That's why I put all my money on this random coin that I heard someone in a Reddit talking about, and now I'm down 50%. People are always out there chasing these highs. And the thing is, cryptocurrencies, there's so much money to be made, and I know a lot of people come here just for, the sweet gains. And that's cool. Those people absolutely have to be in here. But when you start to realize, like, hey, I can do both. I can invest in really awesome tech that's going to give me great financial returns over time. Well, that's super awesome. But you have to do your homework, and you have to be patient.
And the other thing, too, you're spot on. And I think that as we move through, we're not going to see these ICOs the same way. And so for that reason, it's very exciting for the long-term value, because it's going to get harder and harder for those who want to manipulate markets, or those who, as K-Dub was saying, just want to jump in for the quick 5x or the 3x or whatever. It's going to get really hard for them. And what I really like is that, you know, by closing that immediate speculative door, it really opens up the door for those who are spending 18 hours a day in their offices to try and make something that's really applicable. Because, you know, K-Dub and Lark, you also get to talk to CEOs, and we know from personal experience, these guys work so goddamn hard. You know, sorry, I shouldn't say that, but they work extremely hard. And I really respect that, because they really are focused on the tech. They're really focused on trying to build it. And unfortunately, there's a counterpart that really challenges that sometimes in the nature of the system right now, and it can debilitate certain projects. So yeah, I really am a proponent of trying to make sure that their long-term endeavor of these companies survives in these good projects. That's what it's all about. That being said, I understand that there's markets at play, and I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to capitalize on it, but it's putting those two things together and working out how do they fit, and not letting the abuse continue, because it's definitely happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, every time I talk to any of these developers or CEOs and you ask them the price of their project, they're like, I don't know, I haven't looked at CoinMarketCap in like 2 weeks.
Right.
Like they don't, like price to them doesn't matter, because that's just, you know, that's a game for people that are they're just playing that right now. For these developers, they're like, no, I'm not in it to try to like 10x or whatever. They're like, I'm actually trying to make what exists now better. Because what's the point in me getting up every day and going to my job and helping to decentralize things, you know, make it a lot more secure? I mean, look at all the things that you've seen with the Cambridge Analytica, the Facebook, okay? You know, people, you know, as much as we're like, well, the average person doesn't care. Yeah, well, yeah, they do though. Trust me, they do. At what point are you going to sacrifice your privacy?
Yeah, and there's a really good indicator of that with lockups. And you guys would know this. When you see things that are just completely unlocked right from the outset for everything, you know something's going to happen. And what I love is when you see, like, I'll give you some information about, for example, Oasis. Oasis is something coming, is something to know about, I think, because Dawn Song
Mark it down, guys. Oasis is coming.
Yeah, right, Oasis down.
Oasis Labs. No, okay.
Yeah. So Dawn Song is just someone extremely reputable in the space, and from my understanding, it's quite a long lockup, and I still need to look at it more. But because of that, already my brain is saying, wow, you know, they're pretty confident, because that whole gearing of that means that they are the antithesis of of those who are designed to really be a quick flip, or a quick buck. And that also speaks of their confidence and their long-term value. So I also think we're going to see more of that. I'm going to see a lot more long-term lockups, as opposed to your immediate quick 100% drop of everything.
Yeah, and that you know what, that increases confidence in the projects as well, because the thing is that they don't actually realize how much they're harming their business by doing what they do. When you're seeing these ICOs, these token sales come out with like 100% bonus in round one and 95%, like who wouldn't dump? Like if I give you 100% for free and you got to pay your bills and you have rent and you have groceries and all these others, why wouldn't you just dump? You know what I'm saying? So now you're seeing these lockup periods. You're seeing, this is the thing that I like. And one of the things that I want to see implemented in these ICOs in the future is I want to see smart contract ICOs, where these funds don't get released until you hit a milestone. You say that you're going to do X, whatever. You're going to come out with a minimal viable product, or you're going to have the test net up and running, or you're going to have your first DApp. When you hit that, funds get released. If you don't, funds get returned to the investors.
That's so cool. I like that idea. I'd love to see that coupled with evidence of expenditure in their budget. So, for example, I'd like to see Hashgraph. I mean, I'm interested in the Hashgraph design for sure. And Lehman Baird is just one very impressive academic. But I'd like to see how they spend their money. Because look at Dfinity, for example. They ask for a lot of money. And there's not a lot of understanding. Yeah. So why not? Why not, as participants in this space, why don't we get to see their plan? Because I can honestly tell you that I am not a proponent of that kind of amount of money. I'm not a fan of that kind of raise. And that's because I don't know why they need that much. And I'd like to know more about why. So again, tell me why in steps.
Yeah, and this is something that's kind of, you see happening a lot in the ICO market, is that because they can, they do. And no project really needs 400 or 500 million, if you can't start on 20 or 10 or 3, give me $3 million and I will give you a business in a year. I guarantee that. Like, how can you not do it with all this money that they're getting? And look, EOS has just raised over $1 billion, and that's absolutely crazy. But some of these projects that just go in, okay, yeah, we're going to do, you know, 500 million to private investors, and then we're going to airdrop
I'm 100% with you on that. Like,
what do you? Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, what do you think about that whole? Somebody was talking about the sell wall with the EOS and the manipulation with accumulating all of this Ethereum this whole time. How do you feel about that? Like this year-long ICO where EOS is just literally taking all of this Ethereum, and then like, is EOS partially responsible for this manipulation? I don't know, but that's a lot of Ethereum.
Yeah. Lark, I'm going to let you take this because you know a fair bit on EOS, but I will just say I agree with you, Lark. I don't think they need that much money. I'm going to be like the devil's advocate.
Didn't Dan Larimer say? I'm sorry. Didn't Dan Larimer say that they were like good a year ago? Didn't he say that the product was fine a year ago?
They were probably good after like week 1.
Right, and also like they've been building out their tech in the interim as well. Like they've been planning more of their approach. So once again, it's like you said, while ever it's still a nascent space, everyone's trialing different means to really become, you know, a force in the industry. And really, essentially, they're trying to compete with all the others. Look at Cardano as another example. They're really trying. They're doing everything they possibly can to enter into the space and have a mainstay position. And they do something very different as well. Look at Neo as another example. We wouldn't be having the same conversation about Neo if it was 5 months ago. We'd be all, you know, really excited about that. But things change really quickly in the space. And again, market movement happens because people essentially are doing this whole, it's almost like jumping from carriage to carriage along the train, but then dropping that carriage off the train and moving along. So you end up with, you know, adding in the front. So yeah, I don't know. I think for me personally, having talked to so many good projects, I look for, you know, many of the things we talked about, but I also want to hear the CEO say literally to me, we don't need a great deal of money. We need this much, and this is why. Like literally unpack it into the point where they're so precise. And I can honestly tell you without any shill, Arweave did that for me. They had a very small raise, and that's not why I talked to them. I'll make that clear. But they were able to articulate exactly why they had that raise. And they had great tech behind them. So that was a pretty recent one, and their mainnet's coming up. So that was interesting too. We'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, absolutely. As ICO investors, we're in such a strange place right now because on the one hand, we need to demand more of ICOs, but it's one of those situations where no one's willing to take that stand. Because I can say, well, okay, I'm not going to invest in an ICO unless they do X, Y, and Z. They lock up, you know, their funds in smart contracts, and they make sure they have, you know, 2-year vests or 3-year vests or 4-year vests for their teams. That would be really good to see, of course. No, because the next guy's gonna come through like, oh, 10x, I'm getting it, and then everyone just chases that hype, you know. And you look at the insane hype behind some of these projects, and you start to realize, like, holy cow, like it's just no matter what, the market's totally crazy right now. And even if we come in and say, hey, we would like to see these not regulations, but these kind of rules or best practices, I should say, put into place for ICOs where they provide certain things that investors should really demand and expect from these ICOs, but there's no incentive to because they keep raising $20 million, $30 million,
exactly
like that.
I mean, and also given the fact that, you know, Lark and I are obviously in different countries, and KW, you're in the US now, that's a tough situation to be in as well because everyone has different jurisdictions to follow. And so once again, you also have this issue with the SEC really hammering right now all of those sort of defunct or inappropriately, you know, operating projects or, you know, illegally operating ones. And then you also have the anomaly of all these pools that are pretending to be the funds or or hiding. There's a lot of things going on. So we're constantly fighting this this battle of illegitimacy or of, you know, underhanded deals, of black markets, of all sorts of stuff going on. Because the reality is it's prevalent, it's real. It's like box mining said. We have to bring it to the fore and get real about it.
And it's happening, guys. Anyone who doesn't think it's happening, we get a lot of this inside picture, and it's going on. Kate, hop in here.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say, actually, you guys are talking about ICOs, and what's funny is I love to research them. I love to talk to CEOs. I feature them on my channel. But legally, I'm not allowed to participate in ICOs in my country. So when people come to my channel and they ask me about projects that I generally believe in, I have no choice but to look for a project that post ICO, post potential early investor dump is going to be a good project. So for me, I have to go to that extra step. I can't just be like, oh, well, yeah, they're going to do a real growth, they're going to 5X and boom. I have to think long term. So for me, I'm looking at projects that are going to hit the markets. You know, I'm looking at Ontology, I'm looking at Zilliqa, Elastos, you know, Icon, VeChain. I'm looking at these projects that I know people are like, oh, well, you're not going to make as much money on them. Fine, okay. But
I only made 10X, damn.
but I mean,
eventually people will do that. Eventually that's what we'll all be doing, I think. Because obviously we're literally sitting in a position right now where we can talk about ICOs in a different light, for sure. But eventually we'll all be talking about things that are of utility, which is a utility token, because they'll be on the blockchain, applicable, purchasable, and all that sort of thing. Eventually there won't be this plethora of ICOs of access anyway, and people won't be so focused on the quick, you know, so many won't be so focused on the quick shill. And I think that's a good thing in the long term. But right now, the reality is there's a whole dynamic going on. And we just can't keep BSing about it because it is there. And what we have to always do is do a DD to find the very best projects that matter, whether or not you do it at exchange, whether you do it before. What matters is that Ontology, for example, it kept going. It didn't just stop once it hit the exchange. It kept being of value. And that's right. That's what's beneficial, I think.
The hard thing is finding the ones that, of course, keep going. I want to, Kate, I want to put this back to you for a minute because I think this is going to be really interesting and valuable insights for everyone who is part of the U.S. audience. I know that more than a third of my viewers are from the U.S., you know, and Brad and I are lucky. We're in Australia and New Zealand, so we don't have these regulatory problems that you guys have in the U.S. But so when you're looking for that, what's your strategy? What's your moves? Like, so, okay, something comes out, it hits IDEX. Like, what are you looking for? How are you strategizing how to get into these post-ICO projects? Because I'm always telling people, like, hey, if you miss out on the ICO, it's okay. It's probably going to dump on IDEX anyway, or at least going to pump, and then you'll be able to get it for a reasonable price and all these different things. So what's your strategy around that?
As far as like buying into or doing the research?
Yeah, as far as like actually being like, what do you look for when you try to get into? I mean, I know it's going to be a bit case by case, but you know, what's your kind of general ideas for like, I'm going to go into this I like the ICO. I want to get in post ICO.
Yeah. Okay. Well, definitely, if you're trying to make the best gains, yeah, realistically getting in on an exchange that most people are not comfortable using. For example, a decentralized exchange like IDEX is great, but I definitely like to compare it to the ICO price and see where we are, because you do have a lot of those initial investors that they got their profit, they're done. So you got to like watch. A lot of ICOs do one of two things. They either completely tank within the first couple minutes or they shoot up. Elastos, for example, went up. You know, a lot of the other ones.
And we know why.
Yeah, well, Ron Cheng. Well, I've been very bullish on Elastos.
It was actually because of the way they structured their whole token drop, because they did it in tiers, so they didn't design it for a whale.
Right. Exactly. So, like when I look into it, what I try to find is I compare it to the ICO price, and I see the value of the token itself. So, if the ICO went for 13 cents and it's currently trading for 35 cents. All right. So I take that in consideration, but I also think about early investors, where they put their money into. And then usually for me, I kind of do wait. Like if it just goes straight up, I don't touch it. I just don't trust things like that. Okay. No. But if I see a pullback and I start to look for a bottom, like where it's kind of doing this sideways motion, then I kind of am like, okay, that's price discovery. We're starting to understand the value of the project. And then that's when I usually tend to make my move. So, actually what's funny is one of my most watched videos, but also my most disliked videos ever was my video on WenChain. Now, I made this video when it was the most hyped project ever, and when people were calling it WenChain, like when's it coming out, right? Mm-hmm. And I told people about people predicting it going to $10. And, maybe you should wait for the pullback to 4 to 3. And I swear I'm not a crystal ball reader, but it literally touched the $10 mark, and now it fell all the way back down, and it's finding its comfort zone in the $4 mark. And not to say I predicted this, but that was the value that I saw of it back then. And if anybody had watched my video and taken my advice, you would be sitting pretty right now, which is what I try to do. Like I didn't buy Icon when it was 12, 11, 10. I waited until it dipped just below $2 in that bear market, and that's when I bought. Right. So you have to be smart. If you're not getting in on ICOs, you have to be smart, because there's no project, even Bitcoin, that's going to just go straight to the moon. There's no commodity asset currency that's just going to go straight up. It's not realistic. So yeah,
I do look. I don't know the market work.
I kind of, the way I approach it is if it's something in the post-ICO situation, and that's the universal approach for everybody then, that's free for all, is first and foremost for me, it's all the different criteria that you start with. It kind of doesn't change. In the end, for example, like I've definitely bought certain tokens, like for example, I've bought Neo on exchange, I've bought on, I don't think I've bought Ontology on exchange. I certainly did I was lucky enough to get the newsletter thing. So I own 1,000 Neo Ontology, and I happily state that publicly. That's all I own, because that was something that was airdropped because I had a newsletter access, which many people in the world could have. But
I can't believe I didn't sign up for the newsletter.
I was so lucky. I was like, my God.
The $8,000 newsletter.
I was like, I'll do it later. I never did it.
And I'm really proud of that, because a lot of people really do think that I was the Ontology shill and I was paid, and I really wasn't. I didn't get 1 cent from them. And I think that's also really important. But just getting back to how I would approach a post-ICO, it's really the same. I would look at all the different criteria, look at your partners, you look at the quality of the tech, you look at everything. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter when, it's your money. So you're putting yourself into something that you really believe in. Is it, especially at the point of post-exchange, it's really got to be something that fulfills all that criteria, because so much happens before in the ICO space, so much that by the time it really gets to the post-ICO, sometimes, the opportunity cost is there, the opportunity value is there, because again, long wait periods like in WAN chain was such a huge opportunity loss for many people that sometimes it's nice to be in the active space. You can really be in and out in certain things if you want to, do whatever you want. But for me personally, I like to be in something and hold it, for its value, for its genuine value.
So what's everybody's opinion on the market straight up right now? I mean, how is it that we keep getting up every day and talking about crypto when so many people are crying? Like, I've been on the Reddits lately, and like, it's like, guys, like you see people like, that's it, the ship has sank, we're gone, we missed the boat. And it's just like, I feel really bad for you if you feel this way right now, because you're really missing out on an amazing opportunity. And it really upsets me when I see these posts.
It's typical human emotions. And look, I absolutely feel for anyone who bought in January or who bought in December when we were running through those big highs. It's a really tough time to have bought in. Going all in at one time with all your money is a dangerous proposition, without a doubt, guys. But when you start to look around and you think, okay, let's take the big picture. 1 year ago today, where were we? Right? How much, the first bit of Bitcoin that I bought, how much is that up now? Profit-wise, and you take that big picture, that holistic picture, and try not to get too focused on the day-to-day dramas. There's been a lot of drama recently, and there continues to be a lot of drama. Anyone who doesn't think that this market isn't being massively manipulated by all the different actors who are manipulating and getting money via that manipulation, big time, cashing out big time, it's happening. But, you gotta look past that, because eventually that's going to go away, or at least be minimized to the point where it doesn't move the market like it is now.
Exactly.
If you're getting in on these good projects, you're doing your due diligence, you're finding this cheap stuff that's really awesome tech, awesome projects, awesome teams, and you're getting in and you're being patient, then the day-to-day market action doesn't freak those people out so much, I think.
Yeah, I agree totally. And early entry, regardless of when in the market, if it's post-ICO, early entry, due diligence, I think that's really important, because as we've seen is that the early bird sometimes wins the race in this respect once you've done your work on it. And obviously then it's up to you what you do. But from my experience, I think research is the fundamental. And yes, it's the least sexy, because it's the least, I suppose, saleable aspect of it. Because let's face it, if you go on YouTube and you look at all the interviews, all the CEOs, and that's what I do, they're not very, they're long, they're robust. That's what I always say. But at the end of the day, they're not there designed for someone who wants to get quick information. But it is imperative to understand if it's, you want to go and support these utilities. And that's the same thing for me. Like, I spend a lot of time right now looking at some of the new projects coming up. So, for example, I will drop a few. One I'm looking at quite seriously at the moment that I certainly have not bought, so please don't think I have, is looking at chain space. So that's something I would encourage people who are in sort of those jurisdictions where they can explore that, learn what it is, find out what it's all about, because no one really in the world is talking about that yet.
Wait, Brad, are you talking about space chain?
No, not space chain, chain space. It's really no one knows about it. So have a look at that.
There's also a project called Space Chain that I just started looking at. Okay, okay.
So if you look at Chain Space, and if you look at another one that is really, really fresh and people really won't know much about, and it's not available in terms of understanding yet, but there's a website. What I would encourage people to do is understand a little bit more about what's happening in Korea, because they're trying to, from my understanding, look further into an ontology more on-chain design. So if you look further into that, certainly do so. You look into something called Argo, there's a website that's available, but I'm looking forward to when they drop their website, because again, the privilege in our position is that we get to hear about things coming up, and I want to make sure I share that as much as possible. So I'm personally looking forward to reading about that white paper. But then also go a little bit further as well and look into projects that have utility potentially in the future. I've definitely looked in, I promoted on my Twitter, look into Anchor Network. Look into DX Chain, look into these things that are happening right now, and you'll find very quickly that there's a lot of interest. If you go into Telegrams, that sort of stuff, you can learn a lot, and you can certainly engage with the admin team. But that's a bit for you.
Yeah, actually,
I hope you guys wrote all those down. I was.
Anchor was one of those projects that actually, Brad, I have to say thank you. We were hanging out in Consensus, and I had an opportunity to actually talk to Chandler as well. Yeah. So yeah, those guys are doing great things. Anchor Network, yeah, that's a project I can validate. I've spoken to the CEO himself, and that's a very good project. There's so many guys. There's so many. So it's,
and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the one thing that I learned having gone, and it was really funny actually how KW and I met, because I was really nervous going to Consensus, and I'll be honest, I didn't have a ticket. So I was like, oh my God, how am I even going to get in? Because I wasn't planning on going to Consensus. So I went in, and whenever I could, I'd go in and just go into the bottom foyer, which you can go and you can network and you can get to meet different people. And what had happened was KW was outside, literally just having a break from the cacophony of action going on. And he was in the street, and I saw him, and it was like, boom, and we caught up. And what I really learned very quickly in Consensus is just the importance of people. It really was just part of the presentations were part and parcel. They were valuable, but you could genuinely go to the foyer and engage with people and network with people who taught you more about the system, more about how everything works, more about projects. So you got to meet the Chandlers, you got to meet the Professor Goos from Certicate, and that was invaluable. And I could never have done that without people even like KW there, because it allows you an insight into their operations that you just cannot get from a white paper. So it was a really good experience, and I'm really glad I braved the environment and went there. And I'm really glad I got to meet KW there too.
Actually, I have to say thank you to the both of you, because it was all of your AMAs and your live streams with these CEOs that actually prompted me to probe a little deeper into that, because I used to do videos where it was mostly just me sitting there doing a review, talking about stuff. But then I realized that, like, allowing especially viewers of the channel and the general public to connect with the devs, with the CEOs, with the team, that's where the true value is. You realize that it's not just a logo on CoinMarketCap where the price goes up and down. This logo represents a team of people that are dedicated to producing, a product essentially. Right. So that for me really changed. And although a lot of people said that Consensus was a little bit of a downer, it was a little bit of a letdown, in certain aspects it was. But in other aspects, I really appreciated really connecting with these projects face to face and seeing their, vision of where this whole space is going. Yeah, and that actually put a lot more confidence in me as far as continuing what I do.
Right, so, and that's the thing that taught me too, because one of the other things that I learned too is how, let's just get really raw with this, is that there's the other element of networking that isn't so so benign. And they certainly, come to the fore in places like the after parties or lots of things go on at Consensus that are eye-openers. And what I liked seeing was the productive, long-term focused networking, because that certainly happened. Like, there's no question that there was good in there. And when you get to meet these leading teams, not even just the CEO, but the whole team are there because it's Consensus, you really get to ask them, say, why are you guys so good? And, what are you doing? And you get to sit down for an hour with them sometimes and have a chat. That was invaluable. Like, I could never do that while I'm sitting in my little comfortable chair and, staring, at my screen and at my desk.
Yeah. I totally fanboyed when I met Min Kim. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's true. I saw that actually.
It was so embarrassing. Like, I normally, I meet people. I'm very professional, but I swear I met Min Kim of Icon, and I was like, oh my God, I love your project so much. I was like, can I get a picture with you? He was just like,
I did the same thing. I did the same thing with Matt Spoke. I can't believe I did either, but I literally did the same thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's great,
that
guys.
funny,
That's great. Well, when you meet these personalities, it's one thing to talk to people on camera, but actually, this is something I feel when I do some of these interviews, when I get to talk to some of these people in real life. Like, when you start to understand the passion that some of these people have for delivering great technology, making the world, it's a better place, right? Meeting like Charles Hoskinson, like such a nice, warm guy. He just walked up, gave me a big hug, right? And that's awesome. That just says everything about the personality behind, what you see on Twitter or whatever. And actually getting to talk to these people, sit down with these people, understand what is going on with their project is just so invaluable. And for us to be able to be representatives of the community and bring these interviews to you guys,
so lucky.
It's a real honor, because without all the community support, and I know we haven't been answering any of the questions in the chat today, you guys, it's been kind of going, but sorry for not answering any questions, guys, but
I just want to say, ready, set, crypto. What's up, Mav? He's in the chat today.
Hey,
I love that. I love when other YouTubers get in the chat. It makes me so happy. I love your content, Mav. Ready, set, crypto. If you guys haven't checked that out, great content. Just had to shout him out, man. He's here. He's here with us.
There you go, man. It's the community, though. It's the community, and this is the great part. There's so many great people out there. And by the way, if anyone's not subscribed to either of these guys' channels yet, you're missing out. The content's absolutely awesome. So
definitely. Everybody subscribe to everybody, like all that stuff. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know what I have to tell you as well, I love that we're starting to build out a credibility community, like a credible community, because there's always different sort of agendas, even in YouTube, for everything. And without naming names, obviously, in that context, there's certain agendas we even see in the crypto community on YouTube that perhaps aren't necessarily aligned with the interests that we certainly have. But I love that when we combine, we're trying to represent, first and foremost is the people, including ourselves. But the whole thing is built on, it's a people-based network. It's a people-based system. And so everybody does really genuinely matter. And it's about validating their position on the other side. So we really don't take the privilege lightly. We take it seriously. And, just to reaffirm what you were saying, Lark, as well, is that not only is it a great privilege to be in a YouTube, personality, but then you have the other level of media. So when we were at Consensus, I got a chance to meet Rand from the CNBC side of it, where you see an element of talking about crypto, but they're affiliated with real world media, like mainstream media. And you realize then, wow, there's such power and such privilege and such importance in what you say when you are, have that kind of audience. So that was what Ram was saying as well, is that he's got to be so careful to make sure everything's very objective. And I love the fact that that's the premise we come from, is trying to be as objective as possible, regardless, so that when you do talk to a CEO, you really push them. You're not just being all nice and trying to say, how are you today? And I heard you've got a great blockchain. We don't do that. We find out why, and we push and push and push.
That's it. If anything, that's one thing I could self-criticize myself on for is sometimes I'm just not hard enough on these guys. But like,
Too nice,
the thing is, I try to only invite on, projects I'm personally excited about. So it kind of makes it easy to, I guess, not be so hard on them because I already looked into it. And like the reason I had these people on almost always, of course, is because I'm excited about their project. And that's one thing, I think, one note I want to make for everyone out there is that look into these teams, really dig and, watch the interviews with them, get a feel for the people behind it, because I've had a few interviews where when I was back a few months ago, I was open to having just kind of a wider range of interviews with more people from different projects, I will say. And some of those interviews are so incredibly telling about why you would never want to invest in their project. Because the people behind it are just, And that's the thing. The teams are what push it. And some other cryptos out there also have these kind of teams that don't give you any confidence in what they're doing. So that's like, public service advisory for everyone out there. Guys, I want to give you one more question before we finish up for today. This is just a fun one. What project do you think is going to be one of the biggest pushers for mass adoption?
Whoa.
No, Mark, why a hard one to finish?
One.
Just one.
You go.
I mean, all right. Well, I'm gonna just have to be the cop out guy here, and just be probably one of the top ones, the ones that like your mom and your dad and your grandma are looking at. So, I mean, Bitcoin, that's got the buzz. I think Ethereum, in my opinion, I think that Ethereum is really proving itself. I think that could potentially I don't want to say the flippening. I don't want to offend anybody. I mean, listen, you know, we all have Bitcoin, we all have Ethereum. I think Ethereum might be the one to kind of push it to the forefront. They've really done so much. I mean, a lot of people diss on Ethereum, including myself. I used to be one of those people that was like, oh, what a transact. But realistically, it set the precedent. It set that foundation. It set that, what do you call it? Like, it kind of like set the bar for other projects to follow. So personally, I think that Ethereum would be one of the biggest onboarders for people looking to the next levels, to the second generation. You know, then you have things like third generations with you know, Neo, Icon, and I think Lisk. Is Lisk considered a third generation technically, right? Or is that yeah, I'm not really too sure about that. Yeah. But if I only had to pick one project right now, I would say it would be a more mainstream one, seriously, like Ethereum. But for me personally, you know, not to shill my favorite project, but I love Icon. And the reason that I love Icon is because the loop existed before, okay? They didn't come out with an ICO. They didn't take your money to whatever, try to promote and do this. You know, they have so many actual partnerships with consortiums. They have, you know, hospitals. They have educational facilities. They have insurance, okay? So for me, I think that Icon is what I'm really looking at. You know, South Korea, they've brought us what, LG, Samsung, okay? There's been so much tech that's come out of that community. So for me personally, if I had to pick one project, just my opinion, guys, even though it's totally taken a beating, I would say Icon. That's
just a good buy opportunity, man. I bought some more than
and you know, I can vouch for that because I saw KW meet Min Kim, so that's probably very true. I would say in my situation, I will actually qualify it and say I'm not going to say one because there's just too many divergent sort of industries. There's too many applications that really are suited to different ones. But I will say this: Certic or Certic, depending on how you say it, and I've said this before and I'll keep saying it, is that it basically provides for insurance or the debugging of smart contracts. So if it not be Certic, it will be something like this. It's an essential because smart contracts have to be safe. And everything's going to have a smart contract. So in terms of the future, and I don't say this lightly because I have met Professor Gu myself at Consensus, and it's so imperative that we can trust them. We can literally trust smart contracts in a trustless environment. So Certic is one that I would encourage people to learn more about because there's a mathematical proof in an automatic way as to why they're valuable. But I'd also say, like, look into the future because we just don't even know what's coming. We really don't. Like for example, I'll say this: I don't even know anything about it, but there's one called Starkware, and Starkware, the backers of this particular one were Vitalik, or Hongfei Da, or Alessandro Chiesa from Zcash, or I think it was Zcash or something like that. And basically, they got together and they're all investing, as my understanding, if it's not Hongfei, it's certainly Vitalik, into something that is arguably, you know, very, very hyped. So it's just a little example of when you get this kind of level of people involved in something, you know that there's a lot of momentum happening, even at the very highest level of blockchain minds. Like, you know, because Vitalik is, as Kate was saying, he was part of Ethereum itself. So yeah, my answer is we simply are just at that nascent stage of highly sophisticated blockchain architectures, and there's more to come.
There are so many amazing projects on, and you know, everything that's in my portfolio is something that I've got a lot of faith in. And I think is going to deliver amazing things, you know, long term. But there's outside of that, there's 100 other projects that I think really have great value that they're bringing to this entire ecosystem. But my answer to my question, and we'll finish up after that, is probably PoonDX, actually, because they're going to be bringing so many crypto to so many people potentially. If they get 700,000 terminals out within the next 3 years, that could be a big pusher for, you know, mass adoption. But there's so many of them.
We've actually, though, the thing with that too is I do wonder about when, like, for example, even with like Siren or Siren Labs, however you pronounce it, I do wonder is what happens when these big conglomerates adopt the same technology and they already have the resources and the money. Because even with PoonDX, like you're saying, I don't know if you guys what you guys have over in New Zealand, Australia, but in America we have Verifone. And Verifone has recently also upgraded to introduce possible cryptocurrency payments as well. And they're huge. They're in like 50% of, you know, any retail, whatever stores you go to. So I am worried about what happens if this, you know, these up and coming projects either get bought out or a bigger company is like, oh, well, we're doing it too now. So what if Apple does it? You know, that concerns me.
Buyouts are going to happen.
Well, it's the same thing with Hashgraph, because everyone talks about Hashgraph, and we all know that there's issues with its raise and that sort of stuff because it was huge. But many people don't understand Swirlds, which is the company behind it. And if you look at that one, that's another worry I have, because they're so centralized. And they are like, from my understanding, there's about 49 different entities involved in Swirlds. And my concern, once again, is, are you just replicating that same age-old pattern of traditional control? And because I'm not an idealist by any means, but I do want to move away from that model. So once again, at the expense of decentralization, I don't want to support something that might be really, profitable. I still want to have that carrot there of, how is it going to benefit the user? How is it going to benefit us as people in the blockchain?
That's it.
Absolutely.
Great words of wisdom to finish with. Brad, K-Dub, this has been super awesome. We got to do this again. Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
But this has been a great time. Thank you as well to everyone who came down and took an hour out of their day to watch us talk about crypto. You guys are awesome. So thanks so much for continuing to support all of our channels. If you're not subscribed to K-Dub, you're not subscribed to Blockchain Brad yet, make sure you guys get over there and get subscribed to their channels. So this is where we say, long live the blockchain. And peace out till next time.
Well, actually, if you're on my channel, you say stay crypto and peace out. But what I like about it is that we generally agree on the peace part. So peace and love, everybody. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for coming by. And I'm going to end it awkwardly like I always do, because I don't know how to do this. So goodbye, guys. Goodbye.